Welcome to Grandpa Snippets number 16. We're climbing up there in these, aren't we? It's Christmas time. 2020. My, how the years fly. Kind of the most wonderful time of the year, and so much excitement, and the time of year when there's lights and there's singing and there's cookies and parties and tinsel and hot chocolate and you name it. And of course, Christmas bingo. There's one thing that stands out to me, though, that you have to put in with Christmas, and that is the word love. Love. We should love all the year round, that's for sure. God asks us to, but it seems like Christmas that love is expressed more and brought out more, and that is good. There's a Christmas I remember more than any other, and many times people will say, well, tell us a Christmas you remember, and this is the one that I always recall or relate to. If I could give you a word that would fit that Christmas, it would be love. Seems like a lot happens when I was 4 years old, but I was. It would be the following month in January, I would turn 5. I remember that specifically. I remember it was a cold, dreary, cold winter that winter, and the fierce winds blew around the house on the top of the hill that I mentioned in the last snippet and whipped around and whistled around that house. There was no electricity in the house. We heated the house with a wood stove, which was in the front room. Trying to think if we even hung a blanket up to separate it from another part of the house to keep the warmth in as much as possible. But I remember that specifically, that cold winter, kerosene lamps that we, of course, lit the house with. But that is the room where, to me, love really was demonstrated that Christmas that I'll never forget. My dad had been sick in bed for a month. Not sure why or can't remember right now, but I know he'd been sick for a month, and it was right at Christmas time, and so that laid a huge responsibility upon my mother. She was always a very thoughtful and able to come up with things, and of course God helped her. She leaned a lot upon God. I think that's what taught me so much as a child, to lean upon God to see how He worked things out. Christmas was just ahead, around the corner, and there was little income because that was still during the Depression years. And my mother always had a way of getting things through, though. So let me set that living room up for you. It was just a room with just regular furniture. And we had no tree. So Mother went out to the big tree out to the corner of the yard near the road and got a branch off of the tree and brought it in, and there was a corner stand in the corner of the room, and she propped that branch up on that table. Back then, when you got groceries or something in a store, they came in green paper bags. Like now you have brown paper bags. If you can find them anymore, they're plastic mostly, but green paper bags. And she tore those green paper bags up into little pieces and stuck the green on the twigs to make it a nice green tree. And then she strung popcorn and put popcorn around it and cut paper chains and put paper chains around the tree. It was one of the prettiest trees that I still enjoy and remember. I think for $1 or $2, she bought all her presents. I remember what she got Dad. She got Dad a bag of nails, which he could use around the farm when he got better. My little sister Mom got her a little doll. It wasn't very big, just a little small doll. And for my baby brother David, got him a small set of blocks. And for myself, I still remember it. I wish I had it. It was probably only 10 or 15 cents, but it was a little, wasn't big, little rubber truck. And I loved that little truck. And I remember the happiness that Mother got in return was the joy of seeing her family enjoying Christmas. That was the present that she got. For her treats, she went out, and I remember we opened the side door and it snowed, and got a big bowl of fresh, clean white snow, and she put vanilla and sugar in it, stirred it up, and then we had to eat it very quickly before it melted. And that was our kind of treat for Christmas. Can I share you one more Christmas story? I was 12 at the time. We moved to the city. My dad had left and was no longer with us. And my mother was now responsible for us 4 children. And there was no governmental assistance for people back in the 40s. I always admire my mother's ingenuity and her determination, and she learned hard to the value of prayer and what it would do. And she prayed that God would help her again. She held a job at a used furniture store called Cal's Department, or well, it was Cal's used furniture store. And they took in a lot of stuff, more than just furniture. It was objects and different things that they handled, and quite a store. For the months that she worked there ahead, she kept her eye out for things that she thought that we would want for Christmas. And so to us, they became new, even though they were secondhand items. But she planned for a year on that. And for my brother Dave, she got a basketball. I can't remember whether that was new or whether that was used, but for Jim, my younger brother, it was a go-kart. I think she repainted it, and it was kind of like the 4 wheels, and then the center was a handle that you just pulled back and forth. But boy, I tell you, it could make that thing go up and down the sidewalk. And she got that for Jim. And for my sister Eleanor, she bought a vanity that came in. It was a vanity with a little stool to it and a mirror. And then she took cloth and she sewed a skirt and go around also the bench. And I always wanted a typewriter. And I had that typewriter for years then, but she got me a used typewriter that came into the store. For treats that year was, believe, homemade popcorn balls, and candy canes were always in style. But love was the greatest gift that was given again. Love is something that touches down deep into the chords of our heart, that embeds itself into us and leaves impression and leaves truth and leaves the depths and the meaning of everything. 2,000 years ago, the very first Christmas it was all about love. For God so loved the world that he gave his only begotten Son, that whosoever believeth in him should not perish but have everlasting life. I used this years ago in a Bible school. Must have been 20, 30 years ago. And it explains a little bit about this verse, and let me read it as it is stated. Love, John 3:16. For God, the greatest person, so loved the greatest love, the world, the greatest object, that he gave his only begotten Son, the greatest gift, that whosoever, the greatest need, believeth in him should not perish, the greatest loss, but have everlasting life, the greatest life. I appreciate that so much. It means so much. So what a gift. Everlasting life because of the love of Christ. So I have seen gifts wrapped and given in many ways, and I have done the same. Paper bags, sacks, boxes, and so forth. We find that Christ wrapped his gift in human flesh. Jesus Christ at the manger wrapped it in human flesh. What would we find wrapped in newspaper? I'm going to open it in a minute, but let me first read to you out of Matthew chapter 1 and verse 21. This verse of Scripture, Matthew 1:21. And she shall bring forth a son, and shall call his name Jesus, for he shall save their people from their sins. Just an ordinary looking gift. But what if we open it and find out what God has in it for us? Wrapped in human flesh. But in it was God's Son. God's Son. The cross. The love of all loves. The gift of all gifts. So as you share a Christmas this year, share it with love. Let me close with a true story that happened during World War I. In World War I, the fighting was going on, and the trenches at that time were closer together, and they were fighting. It became Christmas Eve, and things quieted down. Germans on one side, Americans on the other. One side began to sing in German, Silent Night. And then the Americans responded with "O Little Town of Bethlehem." And that night the singing went back and forth between the trenches. Jesus came to bring peace. He came to bring a love. He came to bring it to our hearts. And we can have it despite what others do around us. We can have the peace and the love that he places there. So my desire is that his peace shall dwell with you all this next coming year, and may you have a very Merry Christmas.